Alrighty, so I'm super excited today. We're going to be discussing really a special topic here, how you can enable your sales rep to create content. And I brought in somebody who I don't think you could have somebody better, Morgan Ingram, who I first became aware of a long time ago. He was a content creator, or still is a content creator on LinkedIn. And I followed his journey through his entire kind of sales career, creating content, training sales reps, and honestly building a really huge following over LinkedIn. And now he helps companies enable their sales teams to create content to drive more leads and drive more business. But let me allow him to make his more formal introduction. Morgan, how are you doing? And tell people who you are.
I'm good. I'm finally glad that we're able to do this. I feel like we've been lurking on each other for years, and now we're here. So just as Kyle was saying, I now have a company that I founded a couple months ago called Ascension Media Productions, doing exactly that, helping organizations with their organic content and doing that through employee advocacy. That more so is through the sales reps, and also 4-time LinkedIn top sales voice. So I've been honored with that award through LinkedIn. It's been my main platform, and I'm super excited to dive into this. Also have some sales training background, worked with Salesforce, Slack, all those different companies as well. So excited to be here. But enough about me. Kyle, tell them about you. Like what's going on in your world?
Totally. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kyle Van Voris, and really we work with startup founders, B2B software and service companies. We help them build a repeatable sales process. So that's where you and I have a lot of connection, where we've both worked with a lot of salespeople, sales teams, and seen, from both B2B software, B2B service companies, how they grow and develop throughout the entire growth journey, which gives us a unique perspective, I think. And I'm excited to kick off here and talk about how we can enable our sales reps to create content. But before we jump into that, maybe the best place to start is, why should somebody's sales team be creating content on LinkedIn, Twitter, or wherever you believe they should be?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that I want to talk about before why they should be is why you need to think about content creation a little bit differently. So what I always tell people is, especially on the sales side, you're not trying to be a creator, right? You're not getting a mic, like to set up the lights. We were just talking about how we needed to adjust the lighting. Like, you don't need to go to that level. You just need to be a curator. So a curator is someone who takes content and adds their context on top of what's provided for them. So there's a ton of marketing materials or customer success or whatever they may be. Add your perspective. That is creating content, but you're just curating. You're not doing it from original form, which is creating. So the reason that you want to do this on a weekly basis, monthly basis, is because this is allowing you to access another channel for inbound, another channel for revenue. People are doing cold calls. They're doing videos. They're doing emails. They're doing all these sorts of things. Why not have another advantage point by creating content that people can see, which will allow you to have potentially more opportunities? Whether LinkedIn is the main thing that we talk about here, but Twitter overall is another avenue. YouTube is another avenue, other platforms, depending on what you sell. But you need to be where your buyers are. And if they're living on the platform, you should be posting or commenting at least.
Absolutely. And one thing I can add to this too is, I think a great case study for this is actually how Gong grew. So I remember, and you do too for sure, really early on, all these Gong employees consistently were posting on LinkedIn, getting engagement. They built up what I would consider actual celebrities within their organization. And I remember listening to a podcast by the CMO of Gong, and he was talking about their number one customer acquisition channel was LinkedIn organic. This was in probably 2019, maybe 2020. That's a pretty incredible thing to say, that your number one customer acquisition channel is LinkedIn organic. I think this is an obvious case study on how effective it could be to have your sales reps, really creating content and getting your brand messaging out there. Do you see similar things in your world too, or is Gong the best example? Do you have other ones?
I think Gong, as it stands today, is the staple example, I would say, across the board, because they not only had internal creators, they had really good people leading that marketing charge. Chris Orlob, Devin Reed. If you're in the B2B space, you know what those names are, and they did a phenomenal job with that, on top of Sarah Brazier and creating her content. And they've had other people step up as well in the past couple months that are now new. So I see them always as a staple. Other companies that have done this well is like Chili Piper. They've had some good content creators come out of there. When we were at GB Sales, when I was there, we had content creators who were doing that. I know they still do that today. So that's another piece as well. Clary is starting to do a good job of this. Now they have Devin and Kyle Coleman. So there's a good amount of examples in the space. I would say though that it's going to be interesting to see, how does that go beyond revenue tech, because all these examples are a sales or marketing technology. We have not seen this in HR tech, cybersecurity, right? Climate tech. We haven't seen it yet. However, I actually believe that in the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to start seeing more of these companies do it. I would say HR tech's probably next. Cybersecurity, I think there's an opportunity there, which some people may think that's not the case, but I just see it on that side that might lean into that direction. So those are good examples of it. I think other companies will start to step up. People are living on the platform. HR tech is big on LinkedIn. The fact that most people haven't really dove into that yet, I think is a possibility. And I think in the next year, you'll see some companies really step up. 2 to 3 years when it becomes maybe a little bit more normal. And then obviously 10 until people catch on. But it's probably too late at that point.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, really the idea here is how are you building an audience? So you think like the more sophisticated a sales process is, so you go to the upper mid market, probably the enterprise level for sure.
Yep.
What you see is a lot of the sales reps, they've been selling for 2-3 decades and they have a Rolodex, right? And these are people they've done business before in the past. I think that still will always remain a part of sales, especially at that level.
Absolutely.
But moving forward, I think there's going to be another level of that past the Rolodex, which is your actual audience. So hiring people who have a big following and who can drive marketing initiatives from day one of them starting at the organization, I think is an incredible value add for anyone who's hiring reps. And for you to empower your salespeople to do that is going to allow you to maximize not only on the audience that you've built as an organization, but also the audiences that your individual reps are building and have already, because people follow people more than they follow brands. So why don't we talk about how an organization can actually enable their sales reps to start not only creating content, but thinking in the right way when it comes to content production and building their own audience?
I think so. Something that you said there at the beginning is getting people hired in the organization that are already content creators, which is great. However, as much people think there's a lot of noise, there isn't a lot of those people. There's not a lot of B2B purebred content creators at the end of the day. And being a full-time B2B content creator, there's only on my hand, I can count how many people who legitimately can actually do that. Right. And so to answer your question, it needs to be wrapped around employee advocacy and who actually wants to step up. So as a sales leader, HR leader, marketing leader, talk to the sales team. And it doesn't have to just be the sales team. It also could be your leaders as well. Who wants to start creating content on LinkedIn? Because you would actually be surprised how many people want to do it. But guess what? They have no direction on how to do it. And if they go on LinkedIn, it's too overwhelming, right? Because you see people who are making, thousands and thousands of posts getting interaction. And you're like, I don't know how I even compete with that. So the first thing that we have to look at is who actually wants to do this. Once you figure out what they want to do, then it's like, okay, what do you want to be known for? And what do you want to talk about, right? It's obviously going to be in benefit of the company, but there's some things you can start talking about that will benefit the person too. And then the next step is, how do you want to engage? Are you doing a YouTube channel that is already, and here's the key, that's already supported by the company? So you're just stepping in as you got to show up and just say what you need to say. Are you going to do your own LinkedIn post, right? Are you going to just do your own, infographics? Everyone's different, right? But what I would encourage people to do is, companies already have something going on, a podcast, a YouTube channel, webinars, something. So to get people started, why not insert them into things that are already existing? We could insert a rep into our webinars and make it make sense for our buyers in some way, right? So these are just things that I would just think about from the perspective of getting people involved, creating that formal advocacy program. Then once you create that program, put people in it that actually want to create content, give them the right information so that they can go out there and execute.
So I love that. Now, you get your team together. You have a couple people who raise their hands and said, yeah, I've been wanting to write content on LinkedIn or wherever I want to do it, the types of content that they want. We try to fold them into some of our marketing efforts to help them build their own individual audiences. And then would you recommend organizations having a kind of a structured cadence that they follow with that group of people, where they create content together, where they talk about the content? Like, how do you continue that initiative past the initial excitement?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's with anything, right? it's like going to the gym and being like, oh yeah, I got the gym membership, I got the trainer, and then that's it. It's like, wait, you gotta follow through and make sure that you stay consistent. So to go on top of that, the way that I think about this is weekly assessments, weekly check-ins. So we start the program, we start setting things up. Now we're posting, hey, like start sharing what's going on. Maybe you have 5 people in the program. Maybe there's a Slack channel that you can have, and you share, hey, these are the posts that I post this week. Here's my results, etc. I would try to have someone who owns the program, so they're able to take all the analytics and share it with other people. You could do that as well, but that's what you ultimately want at the end of the day. You don't want to just be like, oh, okay, like we're just gonna do this and like hopefully people post. Like someone needs to own that program, own the analytics, own when wins happen to get people continuously excited. I see it as very similar to when I did sales training. People get so excited when the training is done. They're like, oh, this is great. It's amazing. 2 weeks later, they're still doing it. I check in like, 90 days later and people falling off, within, typically 20, 30 days, right? So that's like not good. And that's what happens in this scenario. You post a couple times, it doesn't get a lot of likes and comments. You're like, this doesn't work. And then you move on. That's not going to help you. So that's why I think it's important for everyone to take a step back and be like, how can I double down to make sure that like whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm saying, how I'm going about this is applicable and is leading to the results that I ultimately want. I'm curious on your perspective on this as well, but that's just how I think about it.
Yeah, I look at it the exact same way. Someone has to take ownership of the entire initiative. And if you raise your hand and say that you want to do this, that actually needs to be something that is endorsed by leadership beyond just the person who takes ownership. Because if I have somebody in my organization who's going to commit to do something and they understand the results they're trying to generate, then we all need to commit and do things together. So
Yeah.
you're adding that almost as a role responsibility. It should be a bullet point in your job description at that point. Not literally, but that's kind of how I think about it. Is now this is
Yep.
part of your job. So are we actually posting content? How's that working? And when it comes to content, it can be a bit slow. So there really does need to be somebody who's constantly helping people create more content and help them get over that feeling. And maybe you've had this before. I definitely have, where you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. You're expecting a different result, but that's kind of what you have to do when you're creating content because
Yep.
it's really slow. And then it starts growing a lot quicker.
Yeah. 100%. It's a long-term game, and not long-term as in like, hey, wait 5 years to get results, because no one's going to do that. But it's long-term as in like, you got to give it at least 90 days to see something, but in reality it's probably even 6 to 12 months, but no one wants to hear that. But 90 days is like applicable, right? Especially if your organization is doing that, because you have to think about the amplification effect of everyone sharing something. Your reach is just going to go up no matter what. And the goal is, how can you narrow down the time it takes for a rep to create content to put themselves out there that doesn't overwhelm them? That's really the key here. And even if it's for the executive, how do you do the same thing? And that's what everyone should be thinking about. And that makes it easier for people to go execute.
Yeah, I love it. So like one of the organizations I think does this really well as far as building celebrity, and it's a core part of their business, so they better do this well, is actually Dave Ramsey's company.
Yeah.
So Dave Ramsey, he does a lot of things, but he talks about personal finance and has spread way beyond that. He's done a really great job building up other celebrities within his organization and giving them their own audiences and their own platforms to actually have a voice. Now, he is a media company, so that obviously should be a core competency of the
Yep.
organization. But what we're doing now is we're starting to see this happen at maybe a less of an extreme level, because you're not a media company. You might be a B2B software company or service company, but you're
Yep.
actually seeing this on the platform level with different social outlets. So I view this as a big trend moving forward. And I would encourage everybody to spend the time, create the content, and start not only prioritizing the audience of your company, but also your own audience. And ideally you stick to creating content to that type of person for a long time, because that's really when it starts to compound.
It does. And I'm gonna flip this back on you. Do you think, you mentioned media company, do you feel like every B2B software company should start thinking about being a media company, or do you feel like that's too aggressive of a statement?
I think so. Yeah, I 100% think so. Look, everybody has a feature that is going to benefit an organization.
Of course.
But now that's becoming way, way more common, where startups today I'm seeing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 competitors. Most software companies are being commoditized right now. And now, once you get to like the enterprise and more complex solutions, maybe not, but on the lower end of the market, for the SMB to mid-market, I would even say mid-market to low mid-market for sure, we're starting to see things getting much more commoditized. And in order to fight that, a lot of software companies are becoming verticalized too, where they're like, hey, we only service architects and we are a project management solution for architects. So an architect would look and say, do I use Asana or do I use the architect only version? So they're competing on brand already. Another way to compete with this kind of competitive landscape is also have education and resources for people to be able to either improve their business, do their job better, whatever it might be. And that's really what it comes down to when I think media company, less so reporting the news, more so creating content that's genuinely valuable for the other person, where they start looking at your organization as one that's helping them do a better job and also providing them a tool or a suite of tools to do a better job, grow their business, whatever it might be. So that's my perspective. How about you?
So mine's very similar. I can't say all. I think in some scenarios that it may not be as applicable. They may not be suited for it. But I'd probably say, like, again, this is kind of like hand sanitizer, like 99.99% of the time, right? Like, you need to be thinking about this because you said earlier, people engage with people, people buy from people. Even if you look at like all the pages that have the most engagement or audience, it's a personal brand. LinkedIn, it's the same thing. So if you're not thinking about it in this way and educating the audience, you're going to be left behind, because if you look at all the use cases that have been successful in the market, it's because their branding ultimately was better, right? I mean, Gong, we're bringing them up again. At the time, Dooley had a huge round raise. It was because they had really good branding and really good marketing. That's the core, not the only reason, but it was the core reason on why that happened. So if you're neglecting it, I think that's a huge mistake across the board.
Yeah, what I think is the idea, the product from an investor perspective is probably a lot less important than distribution. And if you can show that you kick ass at distribution, you're a much more attractive organization than just one that has another idea.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Awesome. Well, Morgan, why don't we close out here? Where can people find you? You got a great YouTube channel. We'll put all the links and stuff down below, but why don't you just share where people can find you?
Yeah. So besides the YouTube channel, LinkedIn, you can find me there, Morgan J. Ingram. And then also you can find me on my LinkedIn company page, Ascension Media Productions as well. Those are the main places that I live. If you want to see me just do some like raw takes, Twitter, you can find me there too. Have some fun over there as well. But no, it's been super fun to have this conversation. Kyle, where can they find you though? That's the real question.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn as well. You'll find me there. Voris.com is our main website. We have a lot of free content. The YouTube channel, just like you, Morgan, we're trying to be everywhere. And I know how tough it is in this environment. And I know your content helps us a lot think through how we can provide better content. And hopefully my content helps folks think about how they can build better sales teams. So thanks so much for the conversation today. And I look forward to doing more of these in the future.
Likewise, man. Y'all have a good one. Take these tips we talked about today, and hopefully it was helpful.
Awesome. Talk soon.
Cheers.